Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll start in a minute or so. Like most of us, you're probably back to back, meeting to meeting, Zoom to Zoom. So we want to give people a couple of minutes to switch focus. I am based in what is again sunny Florida. We had 2 days of really cold weather. I discovered that my car has a heated steering wheel. So that was my thrill for the week. But for Florida, it was very cold for a couple of days and the sun's shining again today. All right. Let's give it one more minute. I hope everyone's doing well and is healthy and looking forward to some semblance of a good holiday period. Mike, did I tell you that I'm flying back to the UK next week?
Oh, wow. You're managing to do that.
Yeah, I've been on a few, thank you, domestic flights, but they're
Yes.
mandatory COVID testing before we get on. So I'm staying away from everyone this week and next week. I've done so well not getting it.
Good luck on that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Something just came to mind for me.
What was that?
When you said steering wheel heating. Do you know that my car in Singapore doesn't even have a heating?
Oh, just because you don't need it?
We don't need it.
You don't need it.
The Toyota that I drive is made for the tropics. It doesn't have a heating.
Wow.
Yeah, but a super strong aircon, of course.
Sounds like UK houses, they don't have air conditioning for similar reasons, right? All right, let us make a start. Thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate it. Welcome again to Churchill's monthly educational webinar. Today, we're going to talk about how equipping your leaders with coaching skills helps you accelerate business goals. This is actually the third in a 3-part series. In part 1, we talked about why should your leaders be able to coach? What are the advantages of that? What are the benefits? The second one is how do you get them to learn how to coach? And so now is making the assumption they can coach. What can we do with that? And I am delighted to have Churchill coach. Maik, you're ICF PCC certified, is that correct? As an executive coach, yes. And also strengths coach and other specialties. Maik will talk about his background in a few minutes. And between the two of us, I think we've trained over 1,000 leaders in the corporate world how to coach. So you're in good hands in terms of experience. What we're trying to do today is cover these learning objectives. What is the relevance of having your leaders coach right now and into 2021? How do coaching skills help your leaders get better at giving feedback to peer-to-peer feedback, their employees, and also inspire greater accountability in people's work? How can it do things like strategic objectives that might be important in your organization of increasing customer focus and also leading an important change? We are very open to you asking questions at any point, so use the chat. We will also pause towards the end if you want to open up mute and talk to us. And we will have some polls and use the chat as well. So if you can, each of you just pop a couple of words into the chat while you chose to join this webinar. And I'll take a look at those in a moment to make sure that we definitely hit on those points. All right. So bear with me a second. For the next sort of 2 minutes, I'm going to share about Churchill Leadership Group. Some of you are familiar with us, some of you are new, so I just want you to know who you're spending your time with today. We started almost 9 years ago with a mission to build leadership and team soft skills and powerful mindsets that are needed for organizations and talent to thrive. We do that through coaching and shared learning journeys. Shared mean that we work with you, and there's a lot of peer-to-peer social learning as well, which is critical for learners of today. The learning journeys themselves teach proven global best practices, provide plenty of real-world practice. So when you leave a learning journey, you not only are confident, you actually know what you're doing and can do it. And we also accelerate learning with individual learning by harnessing people's strengths. And we use StrengthsFinder to do that. Why do we do that? Today, only 20% of us use our strengths every day at work, which means you're paying someone a full salary and potentially only getting 20% of your people giving their best. 80% is left on the table, so we help you accelerate that. All to increase organizational capacity, greater leadership impact, and team performance. So here are just some of the logos of the clients that have worked with us currently, in the past, and ongoing. I'm excited to say we're learning more about working with the US government every day and doing more of that work. It's quite an experience. And also in other industries. Okay, we can do that because we have such a diverse group of coaches, way over 200 coaches around the globe. They act as, they're certified coaches, specialties in their area, but also many of them work as trainers to do the learning journeys, and some do consulting in their specialty too. The diversity allows us to match your location and culture to have local coaches deliver the work, the language that you might need, Chinese, German, French, Spanish, as well as English, many more languages than that. But also we feel the diversity of expertise and specialty allows us to bring in the best right coaches to you based on your need. And that's how we've built the organization. Our coaches are across the globe, not so much in Africa or not too much in South America, but definitely a high population in the other regions. And we have 5 core, what we call signature solutions. The first one is one-on-one coaching for your executives, your top talent, leadership development needs. Team coaching, we have 4 programs in the area of team coaching. We'll talk about those in the first 4 months of next year. Leader as great coach, which is where we're focused today. We have manager effectiveness programs, and also a program that helps you build a strengths-based organization to harness that 80% and increase engagement. All of them were delivered in person and remotely, even before COVID. We've been using Zoom for many years to do learning journeys, and we can use other platforms as well. So Maik, tell our audience a little about you, and then we'll get into the meat of what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, thank you, Jayne. Thanks for the platform. So I'm German. You might notice that very quickly from my accent, but I have been in Singapore now for close to 15 years, and I'm counting the years until I have spent more time in Singapore than in Germany, where I grew up. So I really do 2 things that I both love, and I coach, especially leaders, and I teach them how to coach. So both elements are really something that I find fulfilling and that meet a real need. I have been working with Churchill now since, I think, 2016, Jayne. That's when we first worked together.
That's
We
right.
started our journey together to bring these learning journeys into organizations, as you mentioned. My starting point was in Strength Finder, as you mentioned. It's a great way to help leaders or generally executives learn about themselves, and it forms very nicely with coaching skills. So, and I'm here now to bring in my expertise because, as Jayne mentioned, we have worked with a lot of leaders who adopt these skills for themselves and for the organizations, and we look forward to sharing some of our learnings from that today.
Thank you, Maik. For those that don't know me, I've been coaching for over 20 years. I began as a leader coach in the corporate world. So a leader coach, I'll talk a little about how that's different to, say, an executive coach in a moment. Then I went on to found the Churchill Leadership Group and focus on leadership and team performance, strengths and communication. I now run the company, so I'm always the first point of contact if your organization needs Churchill's help, and I am always there. But we've got such a large team now of excellent coaches that I don't deliver the work because I don't need to. And there's lots of other things that I need to be doing with developing the organization so that we continue to improve to serve our clients. And in the background, Connie is with us. She's our Churchill marketing director. She's also a certified analytics and data expert and has a healthcare background. So Connie's here to keep us on our toes as we do this webinar, and will join in if she feels we've missed anything. I've taken a look at chat, and thank you for your comments. What we're trying to do today is do this as an interview style, so you get the best of both Maik's and my experience. We will use polls occasionally. Again, if you have questions, use the chat. I'll keep an eye on it. and we'll unmute at the end. So the first thing we'd ask you, and I'm going to bring up a poll in a moment, is think about your organization. Think about what's critical for your organization's success moving forward. We're just about to start a brand new year after a very difficult one, and I'm sure 2021 will have its challenges, but I'm sure in your organization, there are certain themes that are going to be critical to your success. So what I'd like you to do is think of coaching and then look at the poll, and you can choose multiple options of which you think coaching would help in your organization. If the option you're looking for isn't there, pop it in the chat, please. I'll read out some of the most popular ones in a moment. So what I'm seeing here is the most popular ones are, we think coaching can help us increase employee engagement. Hands down, it can. We could do a webinar all on that, couldn't we, Maik? And the other one is developing talent. Absolutely. Close behind that are empowering diversity and inclusion. Absolutely. If you think about it, a coaching conversation is about including both voices instead of a leader telling and talking. It's about really including and understanding the employee or the person that they're talking to. And it includes, it bonds, it helps you understand each other to really put that sort of diversity to work in your organization and help people feel heard and understood. Innovation, we'll talk about that in a moment, and leading change. So great. Thanks for your responses. I will end that poll, and I'll share a quick client story. We work with a variety of clients with the program Leader as Great Coach, and a client came to us a couple of years ago, and they didn't know what solution they might be interested in at Churchill in terms of the vehicle of how we could help them. But what was critical to them was that their organization could ramp up innovation. Now, this was quite unusual because this was an organization that is known globally for innovation for almost 100 years. So in my mind, I'm like, you're brilliant at this. Why is this a need? Well, I think they're really good at it because they always keep on their toes and are constantly rethinking how can we improve innovation. And the same organization had, like most organizations, a shift in their population, and a lot of their first line, second line employees now were millennials, and they were demanding different ways of working and different needs versus what maybe the organization had been historically used to. So after understanding their needs at a lot deeper level, what we realized was they needed to hear the voice of their employees. And what was happening is in a lot of conversations, team meetings, one-on-ones, where the more senior leaders were meeting with their direct reports, the senior leaders were doing a lot of the talking. And that's where a lot of the historical expertise lay, right? They were responsible for a lot of the previous years of innovation, but they needed new ideas. And they were in a habit of thinking they had to have the answers. And this is an organization that is very much scientists, technologists, and really, really super smart people. But they realized they needed to listen. And so they took on a Leader as Great Coach program with Churchill, and we tailored it to their need. In fact, we didn't call it coaching, and I can't actually remember because I didn't deliver the program directly what they called it, but they didn't call it, we're going to teach you how to coach. They tailored it to their language, although the content of the program was the same. And they were floored how much these scientists and technicians just absolutely grabbed this with both hands. We even inserted gamification a year later in the web version of the program. And even that they loved way beyond what we thought. So I think the message here is it really can drive a business strategy. And we'll talk a little more about innovation later. But also, don't assume because you think your leaders won't be open to coaching. Is it the word coaching, or is it truly how they need to change their behavior and grow? And the program continues and probably will for many years to come. So just wanted to share that story. And Maik, just going to give a context for people on the line what we mean by a leader coach. So Maik and I are executive coaches. We go through years of training and ongoing training each year, certified by the International Coaching Federation, etc. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about leaders that are in the corporate world or government world who have many different hats. They have to direct, they have to train, they have to mentor, but what needs to be in their arsenal is the ability to coach. Coach to develop talent and coach to deliver results. So when a leader goes from a leader to a leader coach, it takes a mindset shift. And that mindset shift is often, my role is to execute, shifts to, my role is to execute and develop myself and my people on an ongoing basis, not just in a workshop once a year, on an ongoing basis. So that's the shift we see. Coaching skills, they don't have to have all the answers anymore, right? They don't have to have the answers to every problem, which is where a lot of leaders are, the pressures on their shoulders. When they learn to coach, they learn a whole new, brand new skill set so that they can empower their employees and peers and people they work with to figure out the answers together or come up with innovation. And the final is, because of coaching has such a big impact, there's less roadblocks for the leader. The leader doesn't have to have all the answers because they've empowered those around them, and they then can do more of the role that you need them to, which includes being more strategic. So that's what we mean by the shift from leader to leader coach. If you have any questions about that, pop them in the chat. A little data speaks for itself of why we do coaching. It works. And some of the Burson data from Deloitte will tell you that it's one of the best investments you can make to grow your talent. All right. One final concept I want you to think about. I'm not a car person, but even I thought this car was pretty cool. Think of coaching as the vehicle. You teach your leaders how to coach, and then it becomes the vehicle to accelerate whatever you need to accelerate. Does that make sense to you, Maik?
Oh, yes.
All right.
Go ahead.
Do you want to say more?
No, I think that I like the picture of it because it's a skill that is often not apparently not directly connected to business outcomes, but it underpins almost everything. So the moment you use it, you suddenly see multiplier effects all over the business. So and that's how I see this show up in so many ways.
Yes. So build the vehicle and then accelerate it in all different directions. So Maik, first question for you. Why is having your leaders have coaching skills? Why is it important that your leaders have coaching skills even more right now, where we are, December 2020?
Oh, yes. Well, the first and most obvious one is the remote environment that we're in, right? That's something I want to talk about briefly, the remote environment. Also the type of workforce that we're working with right now and the type of work. And we also want to make sure that exactly what Steve Jobs says in this quote is we are getting what we really hire for. So we're not hiring people to tell them what to do. But that requires a different kind of interaction. So the first one, remote work. When we start teaching coaching skills to leaders, we realize very quickly that trust is a very central element. And coaching builds relationships. It requires some trust, yes, but coaching really builds a lot of trust, and that's harder than ever when everybody is just stamp size. Right? So and the skills to understand someone, to listen and observe their body language work surprisingly well on mediums like the one that we are using right now. Even better, we're not even wearing masks, so some things are even working well here. So coaching skills transfer relatively well into the online world. And the second thing is the type of workforce that we're working with. The leaders that in in the Fortune 500 companies, they work mostly through knowledge workers. And the ideas are created by people who are specialists. That was the next thing I mentioned, the type of work. And you just mentioned, Jayne, we, we don't want to appear like we know everything. We actually can't know everything anymore. These times are over. So we are hiring specialists for the works, and we can't even start to pretend as leaders that we know all the things we need to make decisions with full information. These times are gone. So we have to show a bit of humility and act from a point of, yes, I know that I don't know everything. I have to rely on your thoughts. And that requires a different style of interacting, where we openly say, I really need your help and I want your help. So I'm really curious to know what you think, because I honestly have an opinion as a leader, but honestly, I also know that I don't know everything I need to know. And you're really well placed because you're the specialist to make decisions here. So what do you think? And that's the kind of mindset that's really important nowadays to make knowledge workers feel empowered. Without a message like this, they may still feel like I'm in an old kind of company style where I need to just wait for an order and I deliver exactly to that. It doesn't work anymore like this. And the last thing is exactly it's related to the workforce. We want to make sure that our expensive hires, and they are truly expensive nowadays, we make the best out of that decision to hire a highly specialized member of our future workforce. If we just tell them what to do, we're not getting the best out of them. So it's these three things: the remote work, building trust, the type of workforce, the type of work, and getting the best out of our hiring decisions.
Thanks, Maik. And I think that really, if you imagine, look through the lens of engagement, and I know a couple of people on the call today said engagement was important. Yeah, right. When you're spending time with me as my boss, and you're actually coaching me, and you're spending a lot more listening and asking me powerful questions, and not just trying to tell me what to do and give me all the ideas, I'm a lot more engaged. I'm the one doing the talking. I'm a lot more engaged, and you're telling me that my thoughts matter, right? And I feel heard and understood. And that's a big part of what people need to be engaged. And I have to say to you, absolutely, I've always got my own coach that when we're working from home so much, the need to feel connected to others is key. And boy, do you feel connected when you're in a coaching conversation, right?
Yes.
Thank you for that,
But
Maik.
the fascinating thing is when we coach online like this, many people think coaching cannot work online. But the truth is, the moment you're in the depth of the topic, you forget all around it.
Yeah.
So I've seen it so many times, right? And engagement, one more thought that came to mind for me, Jayne, we know in our programs, you often ask leaders, what is the kind of best leader that you had so far? And the response that we always get is that leader cares. And that makes a big difference. When you use coaching skill, you automatically put yourself in a mindset where you show interest.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you very much, Maik. Um, one of the so often when we do these programs, we get feedback and we gather data to measure success for the organization. So the two pieces of data on the right are from a global program. You would know the company, Silicon Valley based, and we've been working with them now for, I think, 5 years, continuing to develop leaders as new leaders come into the organization. And we hear that what you see in terms of the 5 bullets on the screen are what we hear leaders that have been through the program have seen for themselves as benefits. So I think these hit on quite a few things that we heard in the poll. More feedback and growth. Leaders can empower their teams, freeing me up to do work only I can do. I add more value of becoming a coach. Some people think, oh my God, if I don't give all the answers, my value goes down. No, once you actually see it, you start to realize you add more value. Better decisions are made, faster decisions are made because ideas are put on the table, and trust is needed, and it also increases. So yeah. Maik,
Yeah.
How do coaching skills help leaders give better feedback? And the reason we put this question in is this is probably one of the most common things that I hear from clients that are exploring what their organization needs. And it's like, our people just want more feedback. They're not getting it. And if they are getting it, it's not very good. So how does coaching help?
Yeah, this is one of the toughest topics. And also in our trainings, we realized that people grow in this area the most, the moment they learn the skill. And I think when we introduce feedback, and everybody who's here, feedback is a loaded term, right? And the way we introduce feedback in coaching skills is we use actually a different word for that. We call that in the coaching way sharing observations. When you hear that term, that already tells you a bit what the difference is. It's about being neutral. It's about being observant. It's about being interested. It's about delivering in a way that is direct and caring. Yeah, that's the really important thing. So, and how do we do this? We are really observing behavior. So, and that's something we really learn as a coach. For example, if I may try with you, Jayne, I would not say, for example, Jayne, in this meeting last week, you really undermined James by pushing him in such a corner. Well, I might call it feedback, but it probably triggers you. As a coach, we learn to say, yeah, in that meeting, Jayne, I noticed that in the middle you stood up at one point and you asked James three questions in a row, and he had no time to respond, and I think he felt very surprised, and the rest of the meeting didn't talk anymore. Did you notice that too? So this is just an example for how a coach might attempt to deliver observations that are objective so that they don't trigger. Because the moment you use judgmental language, positive or negative, by the way, because positive can be belittling, right? So if you use non-judgmental language, you're much less likely to get team members to fall into fight, flight, or freeze.
Mm,
So, and this is such a core skill to learn, and also to understand how you come across yourself. Fascinating thing is what works with one person and triggers them doesn't trigger another. So for people who learn the skill, it's quite a self-awareness journey. It was for me, I'm sure it was for you. So we all learn to fine-tune our language much better because we want people to improve.
yeah.
That's maybe the last thing I want to mention. We combine this with a coaching mindset. And that means I go into sharing this feedback with the mindset of I want to help you improve. Rather than maybe I wasn't all too honest with myself, and I went in this because I want to prove something to you. I want to win. I want to persuade you. But a coaching mindset is more open. It's partnering, and I'm sharing this with an intent that is positive.
Yeah. And I would add to that coaching mindset is I I I want you to be able to get better and grow for you. And I
Mm.
believe you can, right? The belief in your people.
Yes.
And I hope you all believe in your people because they're on your team, right? Um,
Mm.
the other thing you said, and I'm curious because this is sort of new to me and I'm looking for a tip here from you, is
Mm.
even when we give feedback and it's positive, it can feel belittling. Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah. Because sometimes when let's say I observe a conversation or a presentation that you ran, Jayne, and I just tell you, this was so well done. You've nailed all the points here. And you might think for yourself, how does he actually know? Who is he to tell me that? He doesn't know me that well. Right? So judgmental feedback can be strangely negative in impact, even if it uses positive language. So and that's we have to be careful in a way that we also use feedback that is detailed. So also the example
Specific.
that I just gave you, yeah, the example that I just gave you was an example which I sometimes call lazy feedback. It's sometimes something which I can give to somebody without proof that I actually know any details. And that
Mm,
comes back to care. If I tell you feedback that says, Jayne, the way you asked James this question about his KPIs in a way that made him reflect on last year's results, boy, that made him think. And I
it's
noticed
very
at that moment
specific.
in that moment it turned around. how can you do more of that?
Oh,
So I share a
yeah.
feedback and I coach you at the same time. Yeah.
Notice, folks, what Maik did then. He used positive feedback, like he shared an observation that was not judgmental, but it was a positive observation. And then he shifted to expansion. How can you do more of that? And that's why when coaching, we encourage people in the program to look for what's going right. We don't do that just because we have a strengths approach, our methodology. It's because if you can get people to do more of what they're doing right, it's a fast accelerator of success. So thank you for that, Maik. The one thing I will add here as well, both Maik and I are certified by Gallup for StrengthsFinder, as are many of our coaches. And so we look at a lot of the Gallup data. And time again, the Gallup data tells us globally that millennials are looking for organizations where the organization sees me, not me as one of many, and the organization sees me and my unique talent and constantly gives me opportunity to grow. So you can't send employees on workshops or on courses or on your LMS every day, but you would hope that the manager is having regular conversations with them. And so this really gives you that ongoing opportunity to develop people through coaching conversations on a regular basis. It's not twice a year performance feedback. It's an ongoing conversation, which is what a lot of organizations are asking for. So Maik, number 3, how do coaching skills help leaders inspire accountability in those around them?
Yeah. I really want to come back to the term of a leader coach, right? And there's a big difference between a leader coach and an executive coach, somebody who just drops in, delivers great coaching, and drops out. A leader coach actually has a big advantage, and it's connected to what we just discussed. They are able to continuously observe and help people stay on track. So, and that's a huge advantage of a leader coach. And that's one source of helping people observe and inspire accountability. A leader coach will not just do fly in, fly out management. They will dish out orders on the first Monday of the month and ask the last Friday of the month how it went. A leader coach will show interest and care, and they will notice even the small commitments that were made. Yeah. And even more importantly, we learn as leader coaches to sort of have spider senses for how magnetic someone else's commitment really is. We notice, if I notice, for example, Jayne, you saying, yeah, I might do this sometime next month. I might do this sometime next month. 3 sort of non-specific qualifiers that raise my curiosity, right? About what might Jayne distance herself from that commitment that she shared. And that gives me tools to dig a little bit deeper, right?
Yeah.
And help my team member ask, so you shared you might do this. And I could even be playful here. What might lead you to say, I will do this, I won't do this? And I might also say, what are obstacles that might be in your way? So as leader coaches, we get toolkits to use the continuous relationship we have with the people around us, which is a big advantage compared to executive coaches. And we make full use of our relationship, and we fine tune and understand the magnetism of that commitment that people have. So we help them own it. Maybe that's the last part I want to mention here. Accountability is not something we can give, it's owned.
Yeah.
That's very important. So we want to really help people be accountable in their own way. Comes back to the coaching mindset you mentioned, Jayne. So ultimately, telling my team members, saying, yeah, to do this, you should have the following 5 milestones. I think that will help you stay on track. Instead, I could just say, based on that outcome we want to achieve, what milestones sound like a good idea for you? What milestones would you set that would help you make sure that you're on track? Tell me more. Right, so in that,
I remember quite a while ago now, and actually was in Asia, a client said to us, our leaders don't want to go through and learn to coach because it's too soft.
Mm.
And okay, so turned my coaching mindset on, got curious around what that meant. And they felt it just made the conversation a bit fluffy. And whenever we
Mm.
hear like a misconception like that, it usually means, once from experience, I'm saying this, once we sort of drill down, they don't really understand what coaching is. Many senior leaders will tell us, yeah, I believe in coaching, I'm coaching, and you observe them and they're really advising, which is not coaching,
Mm.
right? And
Mm.
so when leaders really understand that inspiring accountability is a huge part of coaching, now they start to say, whoa, I see now how this really moves the business forward.
Yes.
Because what we're talking about is helping leaders become leader coaches. And these leaders are in your organization long term and working with their employees long term. So it's a conversation that happens over time. So it really does give you that vehicle, that car, to allow for follow-up conversations, which really is giving leader coaches the ability to inspire accountability and hold people accountable
Mm.
to what they said was their plan of action, right? Notice how
People remember
Maik
that. Yeah.
yeah, notice how Maik showed the difference between the manager telling what the action plan would be like versus enabling the employee to think of an action plan for themselves with milestones. And that's important. And so, these sometimes these might sound like nuances, but they're a huge difference when it comes to impact. Thank you, Maik. Okay, so we have done a lot of work, particularly in tech companies, where they need their customer facing or senior executive facing customer service people, so internal people, external customers, to really increase customer focus. And we've harnessed coaching to be the vehicle of how a leader can develop their team to increase customer focus. And that's why we put this in here. It seems to be a big demand. Maik, how in your mind can coaching
Mm.
increase customer focus for an organization?
Yeah. I'm thinking of two things right now here, Jane. The type of listening that a customer rep could bring towards their clients or their customers, and also the use of coaching skills versus coaching. So let me explain. I think the type of listening, I'm borrowing now from Stephen Covey, who introduced a wonderful model. It's called the five levels of listening, right? And they are a very good illustration for how we can empower a customer rep to talk very differently to their customers. It starts with ignoring, and that's when you don't listen at all and just shut my ears. Somebody talks, I look away. The second level is pretending, probably the most harmful way of listening, because you give signals of active listening, but you're actually completely somewhere else, right?
Mm,
Then there's selective listening, where maybe over a drink, the two of us, we talk, and sometimes I zone in, I zone out. Or it could also mean that I listen for something specific and I ignore the rest. Then the fourth level that Stephen Covey describes is attentive listening. And that might mean your customer rep is already fully there. They are in the call, they listen to every word the customer says, maybe on a call, and they get all that. Yet they still ask questions that don't reflect what the customer really wants.
mm,
Because there is the curious thing is there is another level. So how can you be more listening than attentive listening when you're already listening fully? And Stephen Covey calls that empathic listening, right? And the difference between those first four levels and the fifth is that those first four levels, you listen with your own mindset, with your own frame of reference. What do I need to know to help?
mm,
And when you make that switch, when you teach a customer facing part of your organization to think empathically, they think first from the other side. They look from how might the other person perceive this. What is there? Where are they coming from? That is surprisingly rare still, right? And I've heard many times, Jane, the objection: empathy cannot be taught. Completely
mm,
disagree with that. Completely disagree. Because Daniel Goleman, he described it as emotional empathy, which may be natural, but there's also cognitive empathy, which everybody can be learned, almost like a checklist. What might this person think right now? What could I have gone through? So, without teaching coaching per se to a customer rep, they can be taught how to listen more empathetically.
Maik, well, first of all, I'm glad to hear that empathy can be learned in some ways, because, empathy is in my bottom 5 of my strengths. And I have to look through the thinking lens because I don't naturally pick up on people's feelings. And so I'm aware of that, which is a great start. But if I really work at it, I can cognitively put myself in someone's shoes so much better. So this is so important because this is customer facing, right? And so how we do this with clients is we teach the leaders how to coach, right? So then now they know how to coach, they're confident and capable. And now notice how Maik brought in another tool, the 5 levels of listening. And that's what we do. We bring in a tool or a focus depending on the business need of the customer, and then allow the leaders to keep practicing doing that so that when they then go out to their own customer service reps, they can do exactly that, right? So that's, again, you're tailoring the vehicle, you're putting the vehicle on the right path to get to the destination that you want. And it might be a different approach to get to a destination of greater customer service, or a different path, different freeway to get to greater innovation. And so that's why coaching is the framework, the vehicle, and then we work with you to tailor it to your business need. And one example of that was the five levels, which you actually described very clearly for our audience. And I, again, were reminded of how I can use those. Thank you, Maik.
Can I add one thought to that, Jayne?
Of course.
So I think that what I just shared was also an example of how you can make a difference between coaching as a type of conversation versus teaching coaching skills. So I often see when leaders see coaching, they think of, now I must free up 1 hour in my calendar to do coaching. And then it rarely happens. But a much more empowering and honestly realistic approach is that the typical leader will probably use a lot of coaching skills in a one-on-one with their team member without ever calling it coaching. Just by listening more attentively, maybe using the word of your team member. And they say, I want to be more professional in showing up with that board meeting next week. And you ask them, what do you mean by professional? In that moment, you use the coaching skill. And they feel heard and understood. And that's active listening, because you also look from that 5th level there. You're empathetic. You want to understand what they see more. So that's a really recommendation for anyone in this audience. Let's not just limit coaching to that perfect type of conversation that we prepare for, and that if we don't have time, we don't do it, but let's disassemble it. And this was one example. We can pick active listening. And earlier we talked of accountability. That's another coaching skill that we can deploy in an area of an organization where we really need that.
Yeah.
The toolkit.
You'll see how effective Maik is at making the skill very practical, right? Practical, because if none of this is practical and you know how to apply it in the real world, then we go back to old habits, right? It's why we do learning journeys at Churchill versus one-off workshops, because we don't want people to suffer from the forgetting curve and going backwards. And Maik, you bring up such a good point. It's not about carving out more time to coach. One of the things that we've done in some programs with executives to teach them how to coach is, how much time are you in conversations during a typical week? Conversations on Zoom, in an email, on a phone call, in a meeting. And most people, and I'm sure people are on the line today, it's 70 to 80% of my week, I'm in some type of conversation. And to Maik's point, it's about inserting coaching skills into those conversations. I'll share a quick story. I was, and this was a couple of years ago now, because I don't deliver these programs personally myself. And I was in the UK doing this with a client, and we'd finished the first day workshop. And then overnight, this person, because they had a big global team, was on a meeting at about 6 o'clock at night, and came back the next morning. She said, Jayne, can I have the microphone? I'd love to share something. So she'd had a day of coach training with lots and lots of practice, and had used powerful questions at that meeting. She asked one question. Nothing else. She used active listening throughout most of the meeting. At the end, asked one question. And she said, that one question that I asked, I was able to ask it so powerfully because of what I've learned about coaching. I was able to stay in active listening mode for most of the meeting. That one question turned that meeting around. We've been talking about the same topic for weeks, and we completely looked at the situation a different way and came up with solution options. And she was like floored. She says, I'm done. We're like, no, you've got more. There's more of the program to go through. But it can have that immediate impact, right? And it can apply to meetings as well as working with employees. So I thought we had a fifth question. We do. I've got these slides backwards. My apologies. So let's say an organization, Maik, or a team need coaching to apply to help their leaders lead an important change. What advice would you give here?
Well, coaching is powerful because as a coach, we learn to, it sounds simple, but it's not as simple as it actually is. We coach the person in front of us. Change is often that happens to us. And often in organizations, change is unavoidable. Right now, just look at COVID, look at everything that comes to us. It induces change that we cannot avoid. Coaching helps us focus on the person in front of us and give them a feeling of control over what they actually can do. And what comes to mind is for me that simple and powerful model of the circle of influence, Jayne. So, and if you just all of you imagine 3 circles, concentric circles. In the center, you have what you can fully control. The next wider circle is what you can influence, and outside is the things you can't, influence. And change often is in that outer circle. And what often happens in conversations and organizations, we always focus on the things we can change. Right? Very often, coaching conversations start like, my colleague is such a mess and I can't handle him. And then we talk about that colleague who's not even there. Coaching brings us to what we can control. And in times of change, challenging years like this, what can we control? It's often our attitudes, the way we pick ourselves up, the way we approach or adopt a change. What's in your control? And you mentioned earlier, Jayne, that coaching is sometimes perceived as soft, but one of the toughest questions that I often ask as a coach is, what is it that you really find challenging here? What do you really want to address? What can you really influence? And that is a hard question for some people to answer. And all they are used to is talk about the change that is inevitable, right? So coaching brings you really to the area of where people can control, where they have space to move, and where they can make some meaningful progress. And that way it can be really a force for good. You're helping people get some traction back in what they can control, however small that may be. So in that way, it's an empowering way of leading.
You took the word out of my mouth. That's exactly the word I was thinking of. I mean, how many times I think when I've coached people over the years, particularly in corporate, where they come in and they just want to complain, right? And you have to give people that space. They feel safe with you too. And it might be complaining about a process or a colleague, whatever. And boy, does coaching work then, because you get them back into victim mode, almost into empowered by listening, helping them feel heard and understood, and helping them break down the problem in terms of what they can do. A tip I'll share with the audience, someone coached me back in corporate years and shared this. It's a quote, but it's also a mindset. Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. And I use it a couple of times a week ever since, because when I'm looking at something and I'm feeling a bit victim, what can I do? I can self-coach and look at it differently because I've been coaching for so long. So what you're talking about, Maik, is that one-on-one individual change. What I would add here is coaching. Remember, now you've built the vehicles. You've got this fleet of vehicles, leaders that know how to coach, and they will get better at coaching if they keep practicing. So let's say now you are making an organizational change. Let's say you are bringing a certain percent of people back to work in the office. Let's say you're changing your technology system. All of it is change. All of it comes with stress and fear and everything that comes in it. We, like Maik said, the 5 levels of listening is another framework to tailor the coaching to meet the organization needs. We have a framework for change. And so we teach leaders how to go through the steps in coaching conversations, from everything to awareness to reinforcing the change. And so there are ways to really tailor conversations to achieve the change that you're looking for. So this is why it's powerful. It's scalable. Coaching is a vehicle. It's a leadership strategy. So if you want to improve your leaders in 2021, have them coach. It's a leadership strategy. So let me see if there are any questions from the audience. Connie, if you're with us, can you take mute off for everyone? Because I don't know how to do that.
Yes, let me see. Hold on.
Thank you. If you would like to ask a question in chat, that's fine too. If you'd like to share a thought for your peers or for Maik and I, we'd love to hear you. I know some people have to start leaving for their next meeting.
Maybe while we wait for people to type, maybe I can share a tip, because Catherine and Liana, you were looking forward to polish your skills and look forward to some tips. I want to add one thing to that last topic, something you can try to bring coaching to the person in front of you during change. If you ask somebody, what's the challenge here? They will likely talk about what they cannot influence. They might talk about the company that is giving them trouble, colleagues that are annoying. But if you add 2 words, it changes that question. If you ask them, what's the challenge here for you? It can bring it back to the person. And suddenly it's about, how do you deal with that? So the final meanings of coaching questions can have a very powerful impact to help people.
I hear accountability there again, Maik.
Oh yes,
right?
Yes, bring it back. And that's why coaching is not soft. It's very direct. It's powerful. And if we, again, approach it with a coaching mindset, it's caring.
Yes.
Despite being direct.
It is. All right, I'm going to just spend a couple of minutes talking about our program. So if any of you on here want to bring coaching to your organization, here are some of our clients that we've done and continue to do this with, to teach their leaders how to coach and apply that coaching strategy, that coaching skills to business performance. We run a learning journey. It can be done completely remotely or in person and remote. And we were doing it completely remotely before COVID. We've been doing this for years because we work with global teams. It's typically 10 to 12 weeks, and it's a true experiential learning journey with practice, practice, practice. It's social learning because we have peers learning with peers, practicing with peers, working on real world situations. And so upfront, we teach people how to coach with lots and lots of practice, and then the practice continues over 10 weeks with your expert, such as Maik, and practicing with your peers at work. So at the end of 10 weeks, people are confident and capable of coaching, and along the way, they've applied it to move your business forward. So if you're interested in this, or you know leaders within your organization, your business unit or HR would be interested, please connect us. We've got solid results that are from our programs. Here are some on the screen to show. We've got data to back all of this up as to how this works so well. And we'd be happy to have a conversation with them, one where there's no commitment, but just to explore what your organization is looking for. So because of time, I'm going to skip through these a minute and let you know how to contact us. You can contact me directly. I will work with Maik on the back end so that you can meet with Maik and I. 30 minutes complimentary conversation, a Zoom like this, where you can ask questions, bring in colleagues, and talk about how coaching might work for your organization. Starting next year for 4 months, we will then focus on our team performance programs. Starting in January, number 1 of a 4-part program. It will be about accelerating teams by focusing on the 5 foundational functions of sustainably effective teams. So please join us on January 20th. Invites will go out, and that will be one of 4. So let's go back. Connie, are you seeing any questions?
No questions, some comments. And I'm not able to unmute people, Jayne. I'm not a co-host.
Sorry about that. If you do want to talk, pop it in chat and we'll unmute you individually, because I can do that. Maik, any final thoughts you would like to share with that audience? Any final tips?
Final tips. Oh my God, where should I start? I think just an observation maybe. So a large share of the leaders that I've taught coaching skills only realize the value afterwards. So there's a pattern out there that coaching is also a very used word. So everybody thinks they sort of know what it is. We add some precision here at Churchill what it really means. So there's a lot of value of explaining it, right, and experiencing it. And that's also my invitation to anyone here. Do not assume what it might be, because let's experience it. And I think we can all work together to really put meaning to the word of coaching. Because oftentimes that's what I realized so many times, that leaders come to me after a workshop and say, I should have known this 20 years ago. Would have saved me so much trouble. So don't be one of those people, right? So, and who discover at 30 years being a leader that they could have asked more questions. So I've discovered that 10 years after I had my first leader job that I should ask more questions. So it took me a while, but it's a great thing to learn early.
It
As
is.
many things in life. Yeah.
Yeah, I was a manager in corporate for a few years before learning how to coach, and it was like night and day. It truly was. And so when you think about leaders in your organization, how much of a scalable impact they can have, everything from bad boss to great leader, it really is a great investment, because they will affect everyday conversations all of the time. And it really empowered talent in an organization to thrive. So with that said, I'd like to thank you, Maik, for bringing your expertise to the table and spending your time with us. I don't know if you realize, folks, but it's like past 1 o'clock in the morning in Singapore. So Maik is a
almost 2 a.m.
truly committed to coaching and helping you succeed. So thank you again, Maik. Thank you to Connie, and thank you to everyone that joined us. You know where we are. Please reach out. Connie will follow up, and we'll leave you with a poll if you've got a chance to do it just before we leave. And please join us next time. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.